Welcome back to what I'm sure that will be yet another exciting session. We learned previously about where do we stand with the ERTMS deployment in the various member states. So what is the picture where we have the trackside implemented? What also needs to be the connection with the onboard equipment. And now we will have an opportunity to go deeply into the project that demonstrates clearly that there is an essential cooperation amongst all the parties, all the actors, in order to bring the ERTMS into life as a system, and also for the freight operating services, which is especially demanding, given the fact that rail freight operations, you know, it's not really profit-making business. So I'm really pleased that we will have, and the title is known for you, or to you, it's that we are going to talk about the upgrade of more than 350 multi-country locomotives to the baseline 3, and you will hear about that even more. And those who have been attending the workshop number 2 yesterday have learned a bit about it, but we can go now into the more details. And also from the perspective those who have not been present yesterday with us, so I would say the initiators of the project, but as I said, the essential parties that need to be involved. And it starts, of course, with the representatives of the corridors. So Harald Heusner, but you can still see it. Harald Heusner, Hans-Peter Henny, Peter Brooks from the Ministry of Transport of the Netherlands. And we, of course, will have to hear, you know, how the ministry is organizing all the financial support of the whole game. Then we have the Georg Nagel from Prole, because from infrastructure we can't move. So if the infrastructure is ready, we can be ready as well. We have Peter Wilms. We have Peter Wilms that is essential, because he's in fact the one covering or bringing together all the project partners that are needed. And then of course the Rainer Baller, because we need also to have a voice of the owners of the vehicles, right? And we will hear, you know, what is the business case behind that. And last not least, although you will not be given I'd say the speech at the beginning, INEA is with us. So thank you very much for joining us. We will have then an opportunity, as I said, to have a full picture of the complexity of the project. And without any further ado, I will ask Harald to present, you know, the view of the corridor. Where do we stand? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Before starting the presentation, for those who are not so familiar with the idea of the corridors, let me give a short introduction. The rail freight corridors have been implemented to fulfill European regulation to improve and develop rail freight. Regarding the corridor Rhine-Alpine, the stretch of lines from Rotterdam to Genoa, and we are kind of neighbors or relatives to the Hornetberg corridor. In particular, the corridor Rhine-Alpine or Rotterdam-Genoa has also a long history of ERTMS deployment, and so the monitoring of the interoperable system is one of our key targets. So where are we now? After years of discussion and planning and some baseline 2 implementations, now we will see a strong progress in trackside implementation in the next year, which is now all a result of the current EDP. Regarding the ETCS only, which is one of the big questions of the business case, or one of the points where we get the results of ETCS to get rid of the Class B systems, their national strategies will apply. Belgium, Germany and Italy plan a temporary overlay of ETCS Class B, and the Netherlands will switch directly. So you see this is depending on funding and onboard unit deployment. Regarding the onboard units, the baseline 3 onboard is the minimum requirement to achieve interoperability. That was then also one of the big targets here for the corridor, to look on the borders. We said first we have to find solutions at the borders to really achieve interoperability. And now we can say that the baseline 3 onboard unit is what you have to have on the vehicle to achieve interoperability. And finally, we can say now it's the time for vehicle owners to plan their rolling stock in regards of phasing out older machines, older locos, upgrading, retrofit, or new vehicles. We deliver or provide actual ERTMS deployment information on the customer information platform. This consists of the level, the deployment type, some technical informations along the lines, but also documents on the customer information platform. And you find the link, it will be distributed, and there you can look in detail. These documents, there you find links to the DG Move documents, to national implementation plans, and so on. We have also detailed plans in our implementation plan, and these plans, these are, let's say, maps, and the maps are what you can expect until 2023 in regards of installations, trackside, then 2028, so to also have a perspective behind that what the EDP requires. Technical information, system version. We also make a gap analysis, which is important if you think about can you as a user or vehicle owner remove the Class B system or not, and where are maybe areas where we have to focus on the implementation in the future, because at the moment there is no project available. And also, as a result of the discussions, we have detailed schemes about the border sections, because in the border sections it's not only about ERTMS, it's also electrification and the responsibilities of the NSAs if you have to apply for an authorization for your loco. So it's quite interesting to understand how the border sections are working. This is we call it also in the past we all called it the POMIS, but now there's no red anymore on this scheme. But this map, this file shows quite good. In the area below, you see the installations in brown and yellow until now. The blue line shows where we are now, and above the stretches of the corridor lines that will be equipped in next years. And so if you go forward 3-4 years, then you see that big areas of the corridor will be equipped with ERTMS. So what are the essential data or information from the infrastructure managers behind? ProRail, they will replace the Class B systems by ERTMS based on 3 level 2 only, and a program for dedicated lines in the comprehensive network with international connections will start in 2026. And this means if you go back here and look on ProRail, it's on the right-hand side or left-hand side from your perspective, that you then need ERTMS based on 3 vehicles on the ProRail sections from 2026. When the first section will be equipped, then you have ERTMS only there. So in 2026 this starts in the Netherlands. Infrabel, it was already mentioned, there is royal decree that ERTMS only will, that the operations with ERTMS only will start in December 2025. In Germany, there will be a stepwise progress. The decommissioning of the Class B is not decided, but the Rastatt tunnel will become an ETCS, more or less ETCS only section in 2025. So also there we have such a situation that you have to have a baseline 3 onboard unit. In Switzerland, the network is fully equipped with ETCS, and new locos have to be equipped already now with baseline 3. The decommissioning of foreign Class B systems on border sections is announced after 2023. This has to be clearly addressed to the RUs. I always tell this, the vehicle owners, RUs, be aware of that at a certain moment, if you want to enter Switzerland, in the area of Basel, for example, you have to have a baseline 3 onboard unit. In Italy, we already heard today from AC, they have an ambitious program now, and the decommissioning of the Class B is expected stepwise from 2022 to 2025. Special remark here is that radio infill is an additional mandatory feature in Italy, which is not the case in other countries on the corridor. And finally, we have to say that for the implementation after 2025, greater frequency availability for GSM-R is a success factor. So the radio strategy is at the moment becoming one of our major topics on the corridor. Behind this, the Rhine-Alpine Corridor Working Group on ERTMS deals with cross-border installations, radio strategy, initiatives to harmonize, for example, key management and DMI language, risk monitoring. It is a platform to exchange new developments like ETCS performance analysis tools or tracking equipment protection, and also communication exchange with stakeholders. So ERTMS is much more than only trackside deployment. Conclusions are, ETCS deployment is proceeding on RC Rhine-Alpine. The cooperation of all the stakeholders is necessary for mastering the remaining challenges. It's time to prepare rolling stock now. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Harold. Thank you for these introductory statements about the situation along the RFC Rhine-Alpine. Part of the corridor is also Switzerland, so what's the view of the authorities with regards to the needed onboard equipment that should enable the traction vehicles to enter Switzerland?
Yeah. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I focus in my presentation on the following issues. Why is a mandatory upgrade necessary? And what are the main challenges linked with such an upgrade, and a short conclusion. So first of all, and I guess that these 3 items are well known, the braking curve is only solved with baseline 3. So when we have safety margins, then is it trackside national value, we can adjust the curve, but it is not anymore linked on any additional and specialities in the onboard. The onboard has a generic braking model already implemented. The second thing is the functionality limited supervision. This has been realized with baseline 3, and Switzerland, as you know, is completely equipped with ETCS, and the major part is offering the level 1 limited supervision. But we have also level 1 limited supervision on the German side in the area of Basel, which belongs to DB Netz, and it will be part of the corridor to Emmerich on the DB Netz network. And it will be also in Belgium coming with level 1 limited supervision, so this is also one of the need. And last but not least, we have several change requests which will definitely help to increase the reliability of the system. But we have also challenges, and challenges that was my focus for this presentation. And to see what are the consequences of that. First of all, we have now a DMI with SIL2 as a request. Imagining that this 355 locos already equipped with ETCS baseline 2 to have a SIL0 DMI means all the DMIs, and this will be on low cost normally, at least 2 DMIs per vehicle have to be replaced. And the SIL0 and the SIL2 DMI is probably not the same price. It is probably a bit more expensive. Second thing, and this is from my point of view one of the dramatical aspect, up to now when we had problem with the DMI on a loco, it was so simple to switch to another DMI. We have, let's say, at least 4 DMIs currently on modern cargo locomotives. And was it no problem to switch to another one? No problem at all. And PLS was demonstrating that to the Commission and also to ERA representatives in December 18 in Bietz. They could see what it means, how simple we can switch then from one to the other DMI. This will be immediately stopped with the baseline 3 upgrade when we are not doing then for all the DMIs, which could be also exchanged, but then is it even more costly, that we get such a high availability. By the way, it is not only reliability, it is availability. I mean, when I'm running and I have a black DMI and I can switch to the other, then there's no interruption, nothing happens. In a level 2 with no fallback, a black DMI means we have a process which is not any more efficient, and then it's the whole timetable and the whole capacity is already gone. So this is an issue, I have the impression, fully underestimated, and that will have a huge impact. And we spent a lot of money for this upgrade. Second thing, CR782. We recognized during tests with onboard units with baseline 3 that one supplier was not successfully entering into test. After an investigation, we came to the conclusion, oh, this onboard supplier was fully implementing CR782, and unfortunately, if it's done like that with unlinked balises, and in level 1 limited supervision, we are using unlinked balises, even with the Q-Link 1, we have this indication, but they are in reality unlinked. It doesn't work. We have a safety problem, or could have a safety problem, but what we definitely have is a huge impact on the performance. And be aware, it is not the question only of level 1 limited supervision, it is also a problem of unlinked balises used in baseline 2 application. When you think about temporary speed restrictions, also there you are using unlinked balises. And therefore it is not just a pure problem of level 1 limited supervision. The problem is recognized by DB Netz, by Luxembourg, CFL, by the Swiss Railway, and we are currently having a clear demand to the UNISIC companies, but also ERA is aware of that. We need there the change request 870 in a matter that we solve the problem. Next challenge. A radio infill. It was mentioned that our Italian colleagues are placing in service radio infill on their level 1 section, Domodossola-Novara. A first part is already in service, and the other 2 sections will come into service planned end of the year. Meaning that we have in the border section of Domodossola today interoperable solution commanding vehicles either from ETCS to SCMT, or we keep ETCS and continue in ETCS. The problem is now that only one supplier currently is offering a radio infill, and all others are saying us we will not implement radio infill. It is not that clear what we have to do with radio infill. Therefore, we risk that either we have to modify the transition at the border in a matter that we not go into ETCS, that we always command in first priority to SCMT, but then our Italian colleagues having a level 1 installed, but no one is using it, or we let it as it is, but then we change the train again or the vehicle again at the border, and we can't run to Italy. So this is an issue. We have to be clear. Will hinder efficient traffic. We have not yet a solution that all suppliers would deliver us radiant fill. Not available. Next. Has to do with the authorization process. I try to do it short. In the new legislation, it is clearly stated that when you have a vehicle which got the type authorization first, which is as prototype, may even having an authorization for placing on the market, that when then a series is following, meaning in the night you are making the upgrade, in the day after, in the morning, we could run with this vehicle, we have to wait formally on the authorization for placing on the market for this vehicle. And it is clearly stated in the legislation that can take at least, or worst case, 4 weeks. What is someone doing, a keeper, when he has the vehicle upgraded, ready for operation, but he has to wait to formal authorization for placing on the market, and when it goes wrong, it takes 4 weeks. There is no planning possible. That's too complicated. Also there, I hope we can manage that in a form that this is very efficient, that we can the day after run with such vehicles. Hopefully, I made a mistake in the interpretation of the legislation. Conclusion. To solve such issues, we are all pleased to work together. I mean, 355 vehicles now, upgraded, costs a lot, and when we are not successful and we are ending with that what I mentioned with the challenges, then is this not a successful story? By the way, we have successful stories. Baseline 3 works. In Switzerland, we are already running with trains with Baseline 3 commercial service. We see no problem at all. But this is something which cannot be solved when we are not doing something. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hans-Peter. Thank you. I mean, clearly you've made 2 messages. One that we will have to discuss later on with the agency, or how do we should understand the authorization process.
I can give an answer right away.
But you don't have a micro now. Wait, we will come to you later on anyways. And then the other issue was it costs a lot of money. Can the governments help us, Peter? I'm sure you can. But
Yes, in 2017, the ministry, together with the vehicle owners, applied for CEF subsidy. We applied twice, and we applied for the whole bundle of 355 locomotives to upgrade them to baseline 3. Initially, it looked as a perfect match because it matched with the timing of the Dutch rollout plan. And that rollout plan is similar as other countries. We want to roll out ERTMS level 2, baseline 3 version 2, 3.60, as a single system. And that means, and we want that we start with a network defined at 2030. You see the brown lines, that are the new lines on top of the existing ERTMS lines. But the precondition for starting this rollout is that we need sufficient ERTMS locomotives. ERTMS locomotives on a level of baseline 3. But let's go back shortly in history about these locomotives, because that story started in 2007. Then we opened the Greenfield project, the freight corridor in the Netherlands. At the same time, Switzerland opened the Lutzberg tunnel, both with ERTMS level 2, single. So already before 2007, the vehicle owners were imposed to install ERTMS. And at that time, we showed them a perspective of, you can run along the corridor, Rhine-Alpine, around 2015. That was a perspective. And then gain some benefits for interoperability. We're talking about 355 locomotives. They run since 2007 on baseline 230D. And they operate in various countries on top of the corridor countries that you see there. We mentioned it. They are now, I don't pronounce it. Germany, Austria, Belgium, Switzerland, Italy, Netherlands, Slovakia, Slovenia, and Hungary. For these countries, they are authorized for ERTMS baseline 2 operations. And the challenge of the upgrade project is to regain that authorization on baseline 3. So it's a risky project. It's a project not just upgrading, it's a rather complex project. And the net effect for the railway undertakings is, I might say, 0. The vehicle owners do not benefit from this upgrade project. Who are the beneficiaries? That is the infra manager and the member state. The infra manager, they have the advantage of a flexible rollout of their baseline 3 structure. And the member states, we all know, benefit from the overall cost-benefit analysis. So the message I want to pass on to member states, transfer some of your benefits, and you are also the owner of the infra manager, transfer some benefits to the vehicle owner. And I quote a remark of Fabio this morning, and he explained to us that savings in infra are much more than the cost of onboard. So there's a justification. And we did that in the Netherlands. Here you see the subsidy scheme for this project, this upgrade project. We received from CEF 45%. And we had a discussion, and we respect that limit. That's a limit for ERTMS subsidy from the Commission, because they have to comply with the CEF rules, and ERTMS is just a small part of CEF. So that's it. That's it for this budget period. For the next budget period, we have also to accept 40% or 45%. So the member state has to increase the level of subsidy. There's no one else. And we did it at the same amount. So for the prototyping, the vehicle owners receive 90% subsidy. And in the meantime, that's more or less nowadays the focus of this project. I said initially the timing was perfect, but in the meantime, the scope has somewhat changed of the project. It was not realistic to install the complete series of 355 rolling stock. We will do as much as possible, but anyhow the prototyping. And this is the last picture. This is the scheme of contracts we have to agree upon in order to align all the parties in this project. And we started, and that's number A, with the initial cooperation with the vehicle owners, that we should apply for subsidy and we should conform with the deliverables in 2023. And we agreed, and that's number B, the contracts with INEA, of course. And on top of that, we, as a ministry at national level, we had to organize a mandate to let public money go into the market to the vehicle owners. That was quite a difficult challenge in our ministry, because the legal department had to link that private contract between ministry and the vehicle owners to public regulation. But we've done it, and the cash flow is organized by a national agency. And the whole set of subsidy, as well as the INEA subsidy, as a national subsidy, flows via that agency to the vehicle owners. We applied for a blending call. And the blending call requires at the national level that you bring in a financing scheme at the same level as a subsidy. That was a difficult figure. Initially, we as a ministry wanted to do business with the European Investment Bank. That did not succeed because as Transport Ministry, we were not allowed by our finance ministry to get loans from the EIB. And maybe this is the message. When you are in this project and you are acting digital, yes or no, there's nothing in between, it won't succeed. But we find a solution with a local bank, BNG Gold, and they are now offering financing contracts directly to the vehicle owner. And the last, and that's the hardcore of the project, that's the contract between the vehicle owner and the supplier. It looks complicated, but it's rather straightforward. What we have done, we have transferred all the obligations, activities, and deliverables of our grant agreement. We have passed it on to the contracts with the vehicle owner, and the vehicle owner will pass it on to the supplier. Okay, that's the structure. I explained how the ministry is playing their role. My next speaker will explain how you manage this project.
Thank you, Peter, thank you. Because the next speaker is the beneficiary, if I understood you well. So the infrastructure manager, how the infrastructure manager benefits. And then we will also have some questions to Piotr about what the INEA can help us with.
Okay. This project is not a project, it's a part of the national program. Sorry. Very good. The project is a part of the national program, and as such we have been appointed doing this project and taking care for their objectives of the national program. And I'm not so, as Libor told, I'm not from infrastructure, but I'm just representing the program as a project manager for doing this project. Peter Brest explained why the ministry is co-funding this project and how they wanted to set the financial structure. It's the project team to get this done. And I will take you with me to give you some insights in how project doing this is really going, which kind of problems we encountered and how we try to solve them. We are not yet at the end, but we will see. First, I give you some context. This is the rollout scheme of the Dutch program. The most important corridor to take into account for this project is the line Keivoek-Roosendaal, which is scheduled to go into operation in 2026. And this means that the fleet needs to be ready for ERTMS baseline 3 operation only. So the cargo lock should be fitted with baseline 3 at that moment. The impact for the program is that originally there was the date of 2024, so they really were being pressed a bit early, and that it moved up to 2026 really had some impact on our projects. I'll tell you later. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. So this is the scope of the project. 355 locomotives. We applied twice for subsidy. The first time 300 locs, comprising 8 prototypes and 292 serial locs, shared by 14 owners, and all different type of owners, big leasing companies, smaller fleet owners, bigger fleet owners. So there was a variety of ownerships. And CEF2 is only 55 trucks, locomotives, variants, 3 protos, and 52 of them by serial. What are the objectives given with us. First is to facilitate the owners in achieving their contracts with the industry. Give them some, help them with giving specifications, help them with setting up with getting the finance done, helping with giving secondly, we had to take care for the objectives of the national program. Yeah? Make sure that these guys are in time, yeah? So that we can roll out our plan smoothly. Make sure that the quality of the systems they are buying is good enough, so that it fits in the performance requirements we have in Holland. And third, maybe a bit soft, but it's real thing is to make this a positive example on how you should do this kind of projects around European corridor, taking into account all these interests of the various countries, and to make this a success and effective way of implementation. So this picture you already saw by Peter. Just to explain what kind of activities we had to do, you see the left-hand box. This is the project team work to help the vehicle owners, yeah, and mainly in making their contract with suppliers. On the other hand, to help the ministry, or to make sure that the ministry is doing the work, because they have to do their work themselves, just by making subsidy arrangements and the financial structure to do the discussion with the bank. And also we have to represent the program, as I said. Yeah. In the discussion between vehicle owners and supplier, we didn't have any responsibility. We can only advise, yeah, make sure that they will come to a contract. So this is the overview of stakeholders. We felt ourselves in the middle of a game, a force game. You see in the green boxes the European entities, ERA, DG Move, the user group, the NSAs. On the right-hand side, the national programs of our neighboring countries, and the ministry, of course, and the ERTMS program in Holland. They were all giving the regulations for how to do our work, and the requirements to do their work within the regulations. And there we have the industry, the orange ones, and the yellow boxes, the vehicle owners. We have put ourselves in the middle to show you how forces went into. We sometimes said, I feel like being a referee of a game. Yeah? The game is to achieve a contract in time between owners and the industry. But on the other, you can also say we are in a game where we have to make sure that contracts will be closed between the non-willing, which are the vehicle owners, because there was the business case didn't fly, and the non-cooperative, the suppliers, yeah, because they were not very cooperative in giving good offers, acceptable offers, deliver in time. So it's a game, and we were in the middle, and we have the regulations and requirements you have in this game that were not exactly fitted for doing this game. This is how we felt. Another thing we had to do is that we had to handle the additional requirements from the national program. The order for the national program was not so much that only to roll out the ERTMS in the Netherlands, but to make sure that with the rollout of the ERTMS system, the performance of the transport system would be at least just as good as it is now. Yeah? So all the objectives in terms of safety, in terms of capacity, speeds, reliability, availability, all those should be met and even improve the performance of the system. And as you know, in Holland we have high dense network. And we found from analysis on the beta route that if we would apply the systems that are now running on the beta router with that quality, if we would apply that in over our whole fleets, yeah, where we have a mixed traffic between cargo logs and the NS logs, the NS trains, then that would certainly come to a decline of performance, yeah, for the Dutch transport system, and therefore this justified that we had some additional, as we call it, national options to ask for to the suppliers. So we asked the vehicle owners to include these specifications, which actually went beyond the minimum of the TSI, to include them in their request for offer to the suppliers. And you see that on the right hand. This is the timeline of the project. We started so in 2017. Originally, when we had the target to have the contracts ready at the end of 2018, because if you need to be ready in 2023, then the contracts should be there. Now you see that we are targeting to have the contracts ready at the end of this year. Yeah? So more than a year behind. The way we are working together with the participants is, you see below the diamonds below the red bar. We have from time to time, we had participant meetings, and we discussed over there the progress and the problems. Mostly it was problems and no progress, yeah? And that made us come to at the middle of 2018 that we asked the owners whether they would still want to continue this project or not. So, and from that you see that how they, we made a little survey, and this picture shows that at that time last year, mid last year, most of the owners said either not to continue, to postpone actually, or well, let's give it a go and try it a bit further, yeah, the green ones, but they had serious doubts and concerns. So the project really came into a crisis. Yeah, because we saw there were three risks identified. First, there was the delay in the national program, which would mean that we would be ready if the project would be on time. Then they would be ready, but not able to use the benefits. And also, nobody was sure that if you have baseline 3 in Holland, that who would guarantee that there were not new TSI and new obligations needed to upgrade and for new upgrades. So the second one was that there was very much confusion about the NTRs that had to be implemented in relation to reauthorization procedures. And the third main risk was that we didn't have any acceptable offers from the industry. So the owners were asking some questions. Can we not postpone and delay the project? But that was not possible, of course, because of the CEF deadlines. Who will take care of baseline 3 authorization later on? Yeah? And are we able to guarantee that no new TSI upgrades will be needed later on? So we went back to the drawing rooms, and because it looked like that we had to stop the project. But then we said, well, no, that's no alternative, so we must go on, and we must fancy a breakthrough. So that's why we decided, together with the ministry, to take some risks out of the project by not doing the serial upgrades in the same time as for the CEF subsidy required. This would give the prototyping more time to be in time, give more focus on the prototypes, and also this would mean that we have to change the grant agreements, because we reduce the scope actually. The serial locomotives are mainly getting out of the scope for this project, for this CEF subsidy. The scope for the project is still the 355 logs, but the subsidy scope is now reduced to only prototypes and some of the serial logs. And it means also that the ministry was saying that, okay, we have to arrange for a second call somehow with the help of the CEF subsidy later on, because we still have this serious lock to do. And also the ministry said they would fund the authorization later to put in service the locomotives, the serial locks, and to take into account the cost for that. So this was the breakthrough, and after that all the vehicle owners said, okay, formally, okay, let's continue, let's go and see where it ends. So this is real. That's where we're standing now. So what kind of lessons did we learn from this so far? Well, you can't really do this with enough funding, not only CEF funding, but also you need national funding to do this. There's no business case for the operators, as I said a few times, so that this is an essential thing. It might help if there are if the deadlines that are tied to this subsidy are being a bit more flexible, because now we are driven by the deadlines of the subsidy, and not by deadlines what is possible to do in the market. Yeah. Second, what we learned is that the way of working, of doing contracts, is not a common practice. Yeah. Is not aligned with common practice. We have to deal with the industry, which is looking at what is the most beneficial for us to do, and they see the subsidy hanging around, and we are around the table, and they know there's subsidy around, and this is not the way they're doing practice. The subsidy rules require that you have to be very transparent in where the costs are, that they are really allocated to prototypes of the series, and that's a bit a hidden field within the industry. So that we have to. This is certainly to take account with. And the third is that cooperation between all stakeholders is essential. And I think you need a project team like we have to do this job, because it don't go out itself. You must have a driving force to do this. Yeah, and an experienced one. You have your connections with the owners, with the industry, to make this work. Yeah, otherwise it cannot be done. Anyway, this is still not the end, and it's not looking very good at the moment. Yeah, but we're going strong. Every time we sat together and said, okay, should we stop? Yes or no? I think the outcome was the worst alternative always was to stop. So we are going on. There's still a bunch of risks waiting on us. And you will hear from us later on. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we will definitely hear more from Peter, because it's been quite a bumpy road, but we are on a better track now, right? You have derailed the project.
Derailed project, yeah. As you heard from Josh, last year we had the experience, and what's the button for forward? I think this one. Yeah. That the owners said to us, nice to have a proposal for funding, but we will not continue because infra is delayed, the costs are unknown, the risks are high because the specifications are still in evolution. Let's stop. So we had the possibility to sit down with the owners and to investigate why they want to stop, because the need for baseline fee is still there. It doesn't move away. If you look to the corridors, as Harald said, baseline fee is necessary. So let's have a small peek into the business administration, some economics of an owner or RU who has owned rolling stock. First, the picture now you see is a picture from the business case made by the Commission, as mentioned this morning by Ian Conlon. Some fingers have some idea what we're talking about. And the idea is to have a real clue about, we are not talking about peanuts here. It are real figures where you need an investment proposal. If you have one locomotive or 100, the story is still the same. You have to make an investigation why it's needed. You have to ask project managers like yours, how are we going to organize? And there will be a financial statute. Now, if you look at the figures for an upgrade, these are between 350 and 200,000 euros per vehicle, per locomotive in this case. And I must say, this is not quite true. The extreme can be even more. And that depends on the type of the locomotive, how many countries you have to address, and that depends on the supplier, and depends on the age of the first installation of ERTMS. If you go back in time, the first architectures are not the architectures of today. How are costs calculated in the business case? Quite simple, number of units multiplied with an average cost per upgrade. And whereby the assumption is that, if you look at the graph, that the cost, in this case, these costs are, I think, for new builds, that the cost for ERTMS will go down. Those are the assumptions. If you have a look, for example, when you buy a new locomotive, let's say 4 million euros, average lifetime is 30 years for depreciation. And the ERTMS within the locomotive of this 4 million is 350,000 euros. Then you have an annual amortization of this investment. That's very sound principle. Like you're buying a house, you get a mortgage, you have to pay annually a fee. That's what they call CAPEX, capital expenditures. Let's say this 100. If you have an upgrade for this locomotive in year 10, you have an investment, an additional investment of, let's say, 350,000 euros, and the CAPEX goes up with 10. You have, from year 10, 110 to pay annually to the investor who paid the locomotive until end of life. If you have a second upgrade, 10 years later, let's assume it's still 350, but the remaining lifetime is getting shorter. It's not 20 years anymore, it's 10 years. That means the older locomotive is getting, and if the upgrade costs remain the same, the increase of CAPEX, the annual costs, are increasing significantly. Let's assume in year 20, another RU buys a new locomotive. They will start in year 20 of locomotive A, they will start with the new price, whereby it starts again at 100. What does it mean? That means in year 20, and you compare it with today, first locomotives were equipped 2007, we are now 2019. Today we have new locomotives coming in with ERTMS, hopefully short based on 3. But that means the owner of locomotive A has to pay annually 130, where the competitor has to pay 100. The question is the owner of A capable of addressing these additional costs? Because he has a competitor with new locomotives, which is seriously cheaper. So I will skip this slide. I will come to the real point of this presentation. What we saw in our project, that the owners simply said, thank you, Ministry, for the nice funding scheme, but we will stop. They will freeze. Because the investment as such is very costly. The remaining lifetime is between 15 and 10 years old. We have too much uncertainties of the planning upcoming, and we don't know if in 5 years we need another upgrade. On the other hand, if they not invest, then they will face the risk of losing the authorization for certain network. Losing authorization for a locomotive running means the risk of reducing the book value. That's called impairment. So the owner is now in a kind of situation, he has to make an investment with loss. It's not a net value of zero, it's negative, it's strongly negative. And if he doesn't, he faces impairment. And you can imagine if you have a fleet of 100 locomotives, and then you have to decrease your book value with, let's say, 50 or maybe 100,000 or 200,000 locomotives in once, the company will stop. So my recommendations, and I think we used in our project some of these, is the new build locomotive is the reference. I don't hear any stories about new build locomotives. The new build locomotives will save ERTMS transition. But we should not make the same situation as with the old locomotives. New build locomotives shall have planned baselines. Upgrades planned like revisions. In that way it can be handled by the owner during the whole lifetime. And locomotives bought today in competition with locomotives, let's say 10, 20 years ago, shall not be in competition because of this upgrade. If we do like to continue this, then we will have a freeze of investors stopping in ERTMS. And I don't know if you follow the news in the Netherlands from the farmers, the angry farmers, then they will come with the tractor to Hague. Imagine 1,100 tractors in the city of The Hague. That was the largest traffic jam in the Netherlands ever. So please have a look to the retrofit and upgrade of each locomotive, develop fit-for-purpose funding schemes, and help the investors to unfreeze and to not force decision making. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. I mean, Rainer, the vehicle owner, I mean, you have depicted the picture quite clearly, you know, although I have my doubts, you know, whether I will be able to put the freight locomotives in front of the Royal Palace in Den Haag, but...
So exactly, Peter, thank you for passing the ball directly to me, because I simply can fully confirm what Peter just rightfully said. First of all, don't be irritated, I'm not from DB Cargo, I'm still from Mitsui Rail Capital Europe. This is just a typo. And we as MRCE, Mitsui Rail Capital Europe, we had this year just our 15th anniversary, just celebrated the last weekend. And I think it's a good opportunity to look back on our company history and reflect this a little bit in comparison with the ERTMS deployment history, because there is really a very close link between our company history and ETCS upgrades, as you will see right now. This I will keep very short because we are a little bit running out of time. Who are we? MRCE, Mitsui Rail Capital Europe. We are a full-service leasing company for locomotives. So our customers are operators. They simply have to operate the locomotives. All other stuff, including configuration, homologation, authorization, service and maintenance, has to be covered from our side. This is what we understand from full service. So established in 2004, and there is a strong commitment from our side on the cross-border operations, especially in the railway area of the railway sector in Europe. And you can see this also. We have meanwhile our own branch office in Italy, and we have our own workshop together with Siemens in Rotterdam. So we are fully present at the endpoints of the main corridors north-south. So there you can see this commitment from MRCE to the cross-border operations is really a sustainable one. You can see this also when you look at our locomotive portfolio. We have the vast majority of our locomotives as the Vectron locomotives and the F4 locomotives. These are really the typical cross-border locomotives for the cross-border operations. And this gives us, first of all, of course, very much flexibility when leasing out locomotives, but where are pros, there are also some challenges. And here you can see, if you look at all those colored arrows, each color of each of these arrows represents a homologation package. So before the full railway package was in place, it was always the big challenge when there was one change request in one of the countries where the locomotives have to be operated. You always had to make the long mile along those colored arrows to the other NSAs to get the reauthorization. And this has to be reflected now continuously on the following slides, because then you can maybe imagine how big the challenge in the past was for MRCE. So here you see the timeline of our company from 2004 to 2019. Below there was then the introduction of our U2 locomotives. This is really not a typical cross-border locomotive, just operating in Austria, Germany and Hungary. But you see, anyway, in 2011 we had to start with the ETCS implementation, and you see already on this slide, this was not just simply one step to implement ETCS, but it was already, let me say, a three-step approach. If you look at the typical multi-system locomotives, so the F4, you see that the history of ETCS implementation is even more intensive, because we had even 3 investment times where we had to invest into ETCS already. And I have to underline, we have not reached baseline 3 so far, so it's still talking about 230D. And then the bottom line, you see the Vectrons. Of course, we procured them already with ETCS. But this also has sometimes some challenges. I will reflect on this a little bit later. So for the U2, it was quite simply. There was a pre-assembly and step 1 of the integration, step 2 of the integration, some headaches, but not too dramatical. If you look at the F4, it was really a first implementation where you had really a 3-display solution where we knew from the very first beginning this will not be accepted on the long run. So therefore we knew already that there will be a second step of the full integration 230D. And I intentionally have put the full integration into abbreviations, because after the full integration to reach the level of 230D, some years later, we had to make the step into ETCS upgrade 230D phase 2. And this was really a big challenge, because in the end, for our customers, the operators, there was no big added value out of that, because they were able to run this 230D before that upgrade and after that also. But there were reasons to do that upgrade, but this was really project-wise a challenge and something that has to be avoided, in all honesty, for the future, because as Peter rightfully mentioned, this is really jeopardizing any kind of business case, especially when you have to provide traction to your customers. So Vectron I will skip, because we are really running a little bit out of time. I have to reflect some basic figures here. So first of all, we are talking about 124 locomotives, taking the 30 U2 and the 94 F4. And we had to invest, meanwhile, a significant high double-digit amount of millions of euros. And in all honesty, if we take everything together, also the test locomotives and also the SG&A costs for the projects, we are far beyond 100 million euros for 124 locomotives. And if you look at the pressure on the company, you see that if you take all the ETCS-related costs, this reflects already 15% of the whole asset value of our company. And if you see at the lifetimes of these, at least these 2 locomotive times, you see that the lifetime of an average 13 years has been reached, and 30% of that lifetime was covered with ETCS upgrade projects. So this is also creating pressure on our company, because as a leasing company, you normally think you just lease out locomotives, but this is really something where you have to have the technical background, and approximately 1.5% of their lifetime locomotives were out of operation. Imagine, leasing lives from the subject that you provide traction to your customers. And the starting point for these 2 locomotive types was already that you start with 1.5% unavailability simply due to upgrade projects. This is something that simply has to be avoided for the future. And just a few aspects, because we are really running out of time. None of the upgrade projects of the past were really off-the-shelf products. You always have to deal with your stakeholders, and 2 of them are really here on the stage, especially Hans-Peter Henny and Peter Wilms. They both will remember the ETCS Phase 2 upgrade, where really it was necessary to have almost 1 year of preparation to define the right package so that all stakeholders are in the boat, so that you make the right investment at the right time. And this is so important, and therefore it's absolutely crucial, even for a full-service leasing company, to have the total overall technical and operational understanding of the subject. Otherwise, you might be driven into the wrong investments at the wrong time. I will skip the coming things because I think we can take this to the panel discussion. There is only one thing that I would like to underline. We really appreciate that now the fourth railway package is in place, and we were one of the companies that were always discussing with the main stakeholders that it's important to have that one-stop shop approach, and we really appreciate that this is now in place. But currently, when we talk about our suppliers regarding baseline 3 upgrades, we get a little bit the experience that it seems to be that for aging locomotives, like for our F4 locomotives, it's not 100% clarified how to use now the fourth railway package for a locomotive, which from the very first beginning was operating as a cross-border locomotive, but they have no TSI homologation in place. So from the formal perspective and for taking all the tools in place, it seems to be that there is a certain uncertainty, and my headline topic of my personal Christmas wish list is that we can clarify this on quite short term, because then we can use the positive momentum of the fourth railway package also from this perspective. So maybe a good opening for the panel discussion, Libor. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It was really great. Thank you very much, Rainer. Although, before we move to the panel discussion, I would still need to give you some more food for thought, because we have also we've got some summaries from the yesterday workshops that have been addressing the authorization. So if I can, thank you very much, have my slides. So that just to show that yesterday what we have been doing was discussing 3 projects. So one you heard quite deeply about, and there were 2 more. 2 more about the vehicle authorization, vehicle upgrade with regards to the baseline 3 of the Deutsche Bahn high-speed trains, and then the SNCF regional trains for the France-Luxembourg services. I'm not going to read the details of the projects, you just see them on the screen in order to save some time. So what have been the main findings there? I mean, in the first place, it was kind of an agreement that, which is in fact in line with so far discussion that we had since the morning, that ERTMS onboard installation should go first, while the trackside immediately follows, but really follows more or less immediately in order to avoid that we will have to upgrade again in order to get compliant with the infrastructure. And then we also have to have a clarity with the decommissioning of the Class B. So more or less we repeat what we've been saying for some, I would say, almost a decade. The second issue is that it was pretty clearly pronounced here in the previous, by the previous speakers. ERTMS upgrade is often a must, but it doesn't bring any positive business case. So we need an external financial aid, both from the national resources as well as from the union. So we will soon give a word to Piotr. We have also an extra challenge because of the situation as it developed is the ERTMS. They have the restricted choice of the suppliers. So how do we overcome that, and what are the impacts? Again, there are some financial impacts with that, related also to the third issue, which is the scarce interest of the ERTMS onboard suppliers to engage in retrofitting and upgrade. Quite logically, it's much more efficient, much more beneficial for all the parties to equip the new vehicle rather than to talk about the upgrades or the retrofit. And then what has been also said a few times, there is always the risk of losing even an existing vehicle authorization. And it will be my first question to the audience, and especially Josef Doppelbauer, because we've been also talking about the authorization a few seconds ago. How do we handle that issue? What else? The upgrade of the ERTMS on board must be designed to be less demanding in the future. And again, we fully agreed here in the panel before that this is a crucial thing. Especially if you will be acquiring the new locomotive, you don't expect that you will have ERTMS on board, and in a few years from now, you will have to make the complete upgrade, or if Peter can, allows me, even a retrofit. So, because you really will have to change everything, since you will not be able to make just a simple software upgrade. The other challenge was identified yesterday, that the current TIU specification in the TSI, it's not allowing to cover the full technical details, and it's still subject to the engineering work, which is of course differing vehicle from vehicle. And the last things are about the Class B, but they are also essential. It's kind of unrealistic to expect that we will be able to run ERTMS only vehicles in the foreseeable future. So you will still have to have some Class B systems on board, because we will not be able to run just and only along the corridor lines purely with the ERTMS. We have to have a network-wide operations. And that's why we have to address also what we do with the Class B. So how to handle the issue of the absence or the non-availability of the STMs, and how can we also push the member states to make a hard effort to provide the STMs wherever they are not available. And what we do is, again, the permanent issue that we have on the table since some years, that it's not the union that is providing us any financial support for the Class B, because it's something that is considered as obsolete. So what are the key takeoffs? Onboard first, track side follows, fine. Integration is really the key, but integration meaning of the onboard project with the infrastructure, so that we have right coordination, what we need to achieve. Early side of the consultation of all the authorities, and I believe that what has been presented in the past hour clearly demonstrates that this is the key to success, in spite of the fact that there was a risk of more or less cutting the project at one moment of time. But you have to cooperate, otherwise you can't win. Involving the agency, Joseph again, without you there will be no future, because you are the single system authority and also the authorization entity. So whether we have huge expectations from you. And again, I'm sorry, it's again ending up with the money establishing the compensation mechanism here, so that also regarding the transfer of financial advantages from the IMs to the RUs, or if you wish, to the vehicle owners. So with that, it's really something that is not covering only and solely the freight locomotives, but also the other projects that have been discussed yesterday during the 2 workshops that we had in the afternoon. With that, I would swiftly move to the panel, because we have last 15 minutes. The first question obviously would be to Piotr. We hear a lot about, you guys, you should have deploy the ERTMS, and now we observe in an inventory that you don't even use the money that have been allocated for ERTMS. I believe the answer why not is been clearly given here a few minutes ago. But the other trouble is that we have, you have a strict deadlines that we have to follow. So is there a solution for that? Can we really make a more benefit and really using the financing instruments that we have allocated by the Union better than ever before? Piotr.
Thank you, Libor. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, I think it's also in our interest to make sure that the budget that we have at our disposal is used to a maximum level. Just to maybe set in the right perspective what we do. We are an executive agency, so we simply execute the budget that we are mandated.
But you can advise, always.
Yes, and we are dealing with the project management environment, so in the project management we've got 2 constraints. This is the budget and this is the time. So for the current financial perspective, time is pretty well set. We have to finish the project by 2023, and unfortunately we cannot go beyond. What can be done, and what we've already practiced in the past, is to allow the beneficiaries of our projects indeed to finish the procedure and to get all the respective deliverables, for notably the NOBO verification, after the end date of the action, but still before the final payment procedure being launched. And this is normally 1 year extra. So this is already the maximum flexibility that we could foresee. In terms of the budget, for the time being, what I can say, that's while we are now discussing here at the conference, at the same time, my colleagues in INEA are just finalizing and will be launching still today, if I'm not mistaken, the reflow call. We call it reflow because we've tried recently to get certain budget back from the projects that already in the past got financing, but which could not deliver. And then we try immediately to put it back on the market, indeed, to try to benefit the most.
But still with the same deadline, so 2023.
Still the same deadlines.
For the completion of projects.
This, unfortunately, we cannot change. And we will put, as of today, a 50 million euro envelope foreseen for onboard prototypes, actually. So I can already invite you to visit our website. You will have there all the documents like work program, like call text, guidelines for applicants, and so on. Please note as well that this is the call that is based on so-called unit contribution. So we hope that this will be easier scheme for the beneficiaries and possibly for us as well, meaning that you will be paid certain amount of money for successfully completed unit. we will not be checking the invoices and all these financial aspects. We'll be just checking the technical documents to have the proof that the vehicle is there, the vehicle is TSI compliant. Now, for the future, actually, because any flexibility we might now have refers only to the future, so to the perspective 21 onwards. Now, after the European election, when the Commission hopefully will finally be there in place, especially the Transport Commissioner one day, it's the time to fix the budget. And I think that we can all agree that one of the ideas would be to come back to the Member States, representatives, the ministries, to convince them to ensure that the future CEF budget replies to the needs of the sector.
Thank you, because I hope that everyone in the audience understood it as a call to lobby the national governments to boost the MFF and the CEF part in it, plus Horizon Europe, by the way, as well, so that we have enough for research. Thank you very much, Piotr. So we can have some questions from the audience, but as I promised, I will give first the word to Josef with regards to the doubts about how efficient we can be with the authorization of the vehicles, so that we do not block the vehicles that are ready to be operated and they are waiting for the paperwork.
Well, I have two messages. The first message is indeed, and I am speaking to Rainer Beller, we have of course now since 16th of June already some or quite some experience with authorizing corridor locomotives. We are, however, a bit restricted because there are only 8 member states currently in the transposition of the fourth railway package. So we have Italy and the Netherlands and sometimes Bulgaria, Romania and Greece. So it's a bit restricted, but we have some experience. And now, directly addressing Hans-Peter Henny, firstly, the 4 weeks that are in the law, they are in the law. The law is not made by us. The law is made in a process involving the member states, and the 4 weeks are a compromise between some member states wanting 2 weeks and some other member states wanting 3 months. So these are the 4 weeks. We have now an experience of exactly 4 months. The average time that we need currently is 14 days. It's the average. We should rather quote the median, because when we have an application and the paperwork is incomplete, then we take longer, and when everything is fine, it goes very quickly. And we have some applicants who are actually very, very skilled. They provide good paperwork. They also have regular discussions with us. They tell us when they come. They also submit the application in batches, so not one application for each authorization for one locomotive, but a batch. And in that context, we can issue extremely fast, meaning within a couple of days. Our objective for the average by the end of this year is actually 7 days. So that is what we want to achieve. This is where we are. Coming to the other question that Rainer asked on how shall we deal with, let's call it old locomotives. There are some transition regimes in the practical arrangements, and I suggest take the opportunity of you being here and contact some of our experts from the authorization unit and have a concrete discussion how these transition regime should be applied. So it has been considered, and we have already had certain cases. There are a variety of means to solve it. I believe we will be in a much better position next year when the whole of Europe will be integrated, but we will also discuss this afternoon in the stakeholder platform how we will evolve with the TSI 22 so that we can eliminate some of the issues that were mentioned by all of you.
Thank you very much. Now, if there are any questions from the audience, and we can also reflect upon what you see on the screen, that the points kindly prepared by Peter. Just please raise a hand, stand up, mention your name and affiliation, and then you can ask the question. Anyone? No questions? Then I can go back to the panel because, as I said, Peter has already prepared some points that somehow can challenge the panel. Anyone who would wish to contribute with regards to what you see on the screen now? Peter, yourself?
No, not myself, because these have been brought in by the owners. I hope, and I think we discussed it yesterday and today a little bit, we touched it, the topic of the Class B, and then particularly the STMs, where we see you cannot have an upgrade project without looking to the Class B installed in the vehicles as such. And for many situations, we need those technology until, let's say, 2040, 2050. And this is where the member states can take an active role, develop their own STN, ask the industry to do something, provide some funding for this, because you have already installed, invest in a Class B, and now you need to keep updated with the latest baselines. And this is, I think, not to be addressed by the Commission, but this should be addressed by the member states. And Peter, you have been addressing this. We are doing this for the Netherlands. Do you have some hope that, for example, Germany and Belgium will help you?
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Sorry, what will be the answer.
I can't answer on behalf of Belgium and
that's why.
Germany.
Because we don't have those representatives here on the panel. How Switzerland is completely, of course, migrated to ERTMS, so Class B is not an issue. It's not an issue, yeah. So it's very easy. It's an issue outside of Switzerland. So, is there any reflection, any reaction of what's been said from the side? Because the party that we don't have in the panel, okay, there is one. It's the manufacturers, by the way. Suppliers we don't have.
Hello, I'm Georg Bessenyei from Jaspers. So maybe not everybody knows that we are also an institution inside EIB and dealing with advising our beneficiaries. And one of the questions is that some of our beneficiaries in new member states also have a CEF fund for retrofitting locomotives with onboard units. But in some member states, these locomotives are the same type. So is there any chance to have a coordinated, let's say, project development between these countries, maybe governed by the agency, to reduce the prototyping cost of the retrofit, which is probably linked for the same type of locomotives with little difference within the countries.
But this is precisely what Peter has managed in the project, correct? Yeah. How did you put it together then? How we can...
Yeah, what we did is we recognized the mutual interest. The national rollout program wants to install ERTMS only, and that means the rolling stock to be equipped first. So there we said, let's invite all the known owners of the locomotives registered in the Netherlands. So our project concerns the known locomotives running in the Netherlands. But we didn't cover the locomotives which are not running in the Netherlands. So especially if you are an owner of a small fleet, you need a national program to get on board of these upgrade facilities, because I hope that you could conclude today the complexity of this kind of project and the risks involved are really not in fit for smaller operators, very simple. So that's the reason why we started, and I hope it will be copied. And I saw from the Italian presentation this morning, they're also looking at it. I think in Switzerland they did in the past some national programs for that. And this is really a success factor for the evolution of the ERTMS, I think.
So the national program is a key.
Peter? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, and the representative Mitsui explained their position. Most of the vehicle owners in our project are lease companies, and they are acting on a European level. So our project is covering some prototypes within the European market.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, time for the final and the last question. Michel.
Michel Russen, ERTMS User Group. It's a question to George, actually, or probably you're the best one to answer it. I was inspired actually by the fact that Rainer showed a picture of a workshop which was just taken into operation, and I was wondering, you were talking about you need an experienced team actually to do this whole project. But have you also thought about having one workshop where all these upgrades will take place? Or is this something which you leave up to the individual vehicle owners to deal that with their suppliers? Have you considered that?
Well, I think it relates a bit to the last subject we had. We were a bit selfish because we only took into account, as said, the locks we needed in Holland to do the operation. All of the locks have been registered in Germany, but to have a common workshop actually requires a common approach in Europe. And the question is, who is taking the lead in this? Should Holland do this, the Netherlands do this, or should it be the task for the European Commission to organize this? And I think we think we already have been brave enough to try to do this project. I think this is not to one of the member states itself, but should be done in cooperation with the European Union.
Yeah. Thank you. Harald, you would wish to add a few words?
We had a workshop in 2017 with their use on the corridor, also leasing companies, and one of the outcomes was also one of the results that there are a lot of baseline 2 locos in the European market, but they're distributed to a lot of owners, and there are a lot of, it's not only, let's say, the number of railway companies or IUs, it's the different specifications. So you have maybe 500 locos, but 40 types of it. And so this is difficulty, and one of the big challenges to somehow bring this on a table and to find a solution for these locos who are not so old. Otherwise the owners will be very restrictive to any baseline 3 deployment.
Yeah, that was a clear message that we repeatedly say here. So thank you very much for underlining that, and also that we really have to guarantee that there will be robust financing. Otherwise, we will have troubles to convince the vehicle owners, especially side of the rail freight, to move ahead with anything. And the winner, unfortunately, at the end of the day will be road. So I hope that there are no road holiers here in the room. So thank you very much. Many thanks to the panelists. So big applause to the panelists. Thank you, and I hand over to Hans for any further instructions.
Thank you, Libor. You have put only 3 minutes on top of the delay we already had. Now we will have the lunch break. Normally it's scheduled till 2:15, and we will come back on 2:30. One more information, this evening we have our cocktail. And when you stay until the end of the cocktail, there is no more tram service available. We have a shuttle bus who is running, and let me see the information, the timetable we will display during the break, and when you come back you can see it. But also for the shuttle bus, the issue is it will go only to Valenciennes City, I would say. First in, first serve. Thank you. And enjoy the lunch. It's outside, downstairs on the right side. And please come back without ringing the bell at 2:30. Thank you.